While I don't anticipate much, if anything, really happening in 2026, they'll have some festival shows, maybe random little things will crop up there, maybe there'll be a different letter. I don't anticipate there will be a whole lot new in a similar fashion to there not being a whole lot new that came out or was revealed from the release of the digital remains to now. As that tour went on, there were little snippets, little bits and pieces, a new letter, but nothing crazy. And it wasn't a super in-depth or fascinating letter. But with all of that, looking ahead to 2026, instead of predicting what might be coming, I want to consider and kind of put in your mind and put in my own mind, for my own sake, some questions that I have that are still outstanding that Breach did not answer. This is not an exhaustive list. These are just some that I kind of compiled together over the weekend and earlier today. There are more that I have in mind. There are more that I will have in mind. There are more that I will think of. But this is sort of an indication of things that I want to consider in the new year. And I think it'd be cool for us to consider, and whether just in the live chat or through the Perligo Ponders episodes and things like that, where I get to hear some of your thoughts on these things as well, to sort of consider these questions and where they might take us in understanding the story. A key one, the first one, obviously, what is the deal with the song titles? The coded, cryptic pairings of words, the phrases on Tyler's shirts during the Clancy tour. Many people thought that those would be song titles. I thought if we would get a second album, which I wasn't sure of, but if we did, I thought that those would be song titles. Turned out they were not. Not just those titles from those shirts, but also that song, I'm Not Home, that was teased during the Vessel livestream. What do we make of this? How do we interpret this? What happened there? Why do we get teased with these things that seem like song titles, then get given an album against seemingly all odds, and then the album does not contain any of those titles? The only exception being Drag Path, but that's a very different situation for a lot of reasons. So again, I don't have an answer right now. I have some theories, I have some initial ideas, but I don't have real answers. I don't really know. My working theory right now is that they're not song titles at all. They're phrases that somehow exist within the story, but they're not song titles. Another question, I've touched upon this before in Perligo Ponders and the like, but I haven't really done a full deep dive into it. Why do we see pictures of Dima burning all throughout the digital remains and hinted at in various imagery and writings and things like that? And then the story ends without that happening. What's going on there? If that never happened, why is it documented? And then we talked about red tape on Saturday. Different side of this, though. What was with the red tape on the album covers, covering the eyes pre-Clancy? Is that simply just a publicity thing, a marketing thing to tease the new album? Or was there something more significant about that, right? How does it really tie into the lore? Obviously, the idea of eyes is something that's been significant time and again, but why did they roll out Clancy in that way? Why did they tape up the eyes with a red tape? And red tape specifically, not yellow tape for the Banditos, but red tape, which Clancy then starts wearing. Again, we talked through an explanation for why Clancy wears red tape, but it's still a little strange that he does, right? It's different that he does that. But it isn't necessarily something that the bishops are implementing, necessarily. It could be, but it isn't necessarily, because then we see Clancy wearing red tape. So what's going on there? And then this is a really interesting one. This is a question I've seen sort of circulating on Reddit, but not really getting talked about a ton. And it is one that ever since September, I've been wanting to talk about. So to just give you a teaser, at some point in January, or not January, in 2026, probably February or March, I plan to do a video on this. What's going on with the propaganda posters in the digital remains that feature Clancy and even tease like the album Blurry Face? What's going on with those posters in that release in the digital remains? Probably, in my mind, the most significant and interesting part of the digital remains booklet for Breach. And then finally, this is one, again, we've touched on a little bit, but I think could warrant a longer conversation and a longer explanation. What's going on with the blue door? What's the significance of that? We see it in the Icy tour. We see it referenced in Clancy's journal. We see this theme of blue being the color of defeat. Blurry Face saying if you wear blue, you'll be defeated, right? Blue is the color of defeat. If you wear it, I will spare your followers, right? During the Blurry Face era, something like that. But what's interesting is then we get very prominently kind of starting with Paladin Strait and going into especially the Contract and City Walls. Both those videos are very blue in a lot of ways. If we look at the color palette, especially the Contract, very blue. Does that tie in? Is that signifying something about his upcoming defeat to Nico, to Blurry Face, to himself? What's really going on there? Again, I think that might be one of the easiest to answer. It's not one of the most daunting questions to consider, but it is one which I think I would like to kind of do a deeper dive into and a longer conversation on. So those are the main questions that I want to kind of consider looking ahead to 2026 as we look at what we'll be talking next, what still warrants conversation, what still has left us wondering, what could possibly be going on here. Obviously, if you have other questions, let me know in the comments on this or on any other videos in the community tab and so on. Again, looking at 2026, the new year, which is almost here, kind of look at and do more deep dives and more theory videos about some of these unanswered questions. Now that we're not really getting much new, now that the news related to 21 Pilots is starting to slow down, considering, okay, now that the story's ended, now that we have the complete story, what does this mean? What are the implications? Let's really unpack everything that's still left unanswered and everything that still has left us wondering.